Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today, our friend Mr. Moth. Man, I love Mr. Moth. Great comments from this dude. Mr. Moth asks, why didn't you do a 150,000 subscriber special? Missed opportunity right there. Well, let's have a 170 whatever it is thousand subscriber special, because that's a number 2. Why do we have to wait till we get a nice round number with lots of zeros at the end before we celebrate? Tomorrow is not guaranteed. I don't know if we will have a day where we get that perfect round number of subscribers to celebrate, so let's do it now! By answering this question that a bunch of you have asked me over the years, which is, Ramsey, why did you have the fighter nickname Danger? Why was it Ramsey Danger Dewey? The Danger Ramsey Dewey. Man, I remember the first time I walked out for an MMA fight, and the ring announcer, really cool ring announcer, don't remember the dude's name, he used to do the ring announcement for a show called The Ultimate Combat Experience in Salt Lake City, Utah. That was my first professional fight. And I wrote down that my fighter nickname was Ramsey Danger Dewey. There's a whole story behind that. We'll get to it in a minute. But instead of saying Ramsey Danger Dewey, he said something so much cooler. He said, and now, in the red corner, the Danger Ramsey Dewey. And at that moment I was like, dang, that sounds so cool. Like, I went into this fight thinking, I'm a nobody, I'm nothing, I don't belong here. And when I heard him say that, the Danger, I was like, I am the danger. And man, what a valuable lesson that was. And it's a lesson that I teach to you, I teach to my fighters, my athletes to this day. In a cage fight, you must be the danger. Otherwise, you are in danger. It's the polar opposite of self-defense, guys. Cage fighting is the polar opposite of self-defense. Self-defense is get away from the danger, run away from the danger, all that good stuff. Keep yourself safe. And MMA, you are literally locked in a cage. There is nowhere to run, and so you must be the danger. So I love that so much, and I never forgot it. The Danger Ramsey Dewey. I was like, man, I should have written that down. Have the nickname at the beginning instead of in the middle. But where did Ramsey Danger Dewey come from? Danger is my middle name. You ever heard that expression? It's a popular little quip in a lot of movies back in the day. Danger, haha, I laugh at Danger. Danger is my middle name. But no, that's not where it came from. When was it? Like 21, 22 years ago. Back in my early 20s, in college. I had an idea. I decided I want to make a Kung Fu movie. I have no idea how to make a Kung Fu movie. I've never done fight choreography in my life. I don't know how it works, but I want to do it. I want to make a Kung Fu movie. And so I went to the library because they had a selection of videos that you could rent, VHS tapes, and some of them were Kung Fu movies. And I checked them out. There was a Jackie Chan movie called Dragon Fist, which has some unintentionally hilarious parts in it. Because that was before Jackie Chan was funny. That's when Jackie Chan was trying to be serious. And so it's a serious old Hong Kong Kung Fu movie. And I'm watching this trying to figure out how do you do Kung Fu fight choreography? How do you make it look legit? How do you make it look like they did in these old style Kung Fu movies? And I studied this movie because that was one of the few Kung Fu movies I could get my hands on. And of course I studied Bruce Lee's films, and I noticed Bruce Lee had a very, very different style of choreography than the traditional Hong Kong style. The Hong Kong style was very much based, I guess you could say, on classical Chinese opera, where they would have like a big wind up, deliver the punch or the strike in a very visible way so you could see it, and then they'd like pose afterward. And Bruce Lee did that too in his movies. He absolutely did that too, because otherwise, if you throw punches and kicks like it does, like it happens in a real fight, it doesn't look real on the screen. It looks kind of like sloppy and choppy, and The movements happen too fast for a camera running at 26, 27, 28 frames per second to pick up. Speaking of which, that brings me to a Bruce Lee myth, which I haven't really got around to speaking about, but there's this idea, and it's often repeated, that Bruce Lee moved too fast for the cameras. Let's talk about that for a minute. We'll get back to the nickname momentarily. But this idea that Bruce Lee moved too fast for the cameras, so they had to slow the film down. And that's not actually true. There is some cutting room floor footage available. And I think it's available on one of the bonus features of the collector's edition of Game of Death on one of those. There are so many collector's editions of those movies. But you can see when Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are doing their fight scene, and some of the other actors are doing their fight scenes, they tried it full speed. And Bruce himself, when he's going over the footage, he decided it doesn't really work at 26 frames per second. If you don't know what that means they take 26 pictures in a second, and 1 second to move. Okay, I'm moving my hand around really fast. What do you see? You see motion blurs. Okay, you don't see clear pictures, you see motion blurs if I'm moving my hands around really quick. And this camera, I believe, is recording at 30 frames per second, so even faster than what Bruce Lee was working with. And it's still just motion blurs if I move around like that. Whereas what we want to see, what our eyes and our minds, our psychology is trained to expect in fight choreography is poses. Very clear and recognizable images. Ha! That's a move. Ha! That's a move. Right? As opposed to, flickers of blurry images on the screen. And Bruce didn't like this, and so he said, let's slow our movement down. And it wasn't just Bruce, it was all of the actors. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, not known for his blinding fast punches, slowed his movement down. And so in the final cut, or Bruce's final cut, not the theatrical release, which was a whole different thing, that was made after Bruce's death. But in the edit that Bruce himself made, he and all the other actors slowed down their own movement. They didn't slow down the cameras because they didn't use a high-speed camera on Game of Death. So you see them deliberately moving slower so that the camera, moving at 26 frames per second, can more accurately pick up their movement, and so we can recognize the shapes like, oh yeah, okay, there's a punch, there's a kick, instead of here's a bunch of motion blurs. So that is where that rumor started. Now, they used a few high-speed camera shots in a couple of other movies, like Enter the Dragon, for example, where Bruce Lee does that famous sidekick against, I think, who was it, Bob Wall? The beardy guy. And he does that sidekick, it's in slow motion. I think they filmed that at like 60 frames per second. And yeah, man, that was high technology back in the day, to be able to speed up the camera and take lots of pictures in a single second. And why did they do that? They did it because it looked cool. They did it because when you do something fast and explosive like that, with a big chain reaction type of kinetic explosion, it looks really cool in slow motion. That's why they did that. It's not because Bruce Lee did that sidekick at such blinding fast speed that the human eyes can't even perceive it. It's just because it looked cooler in slow motion than full speed. Was Bruce fast? Sure. But lots of other people were fast too. I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, again, not known for his blinding fast speed, watched the cutting room floor footage of Game of Death, and he moves pretty dang fast. That being said, punches and kicks in general are fast movements. They're percussive movements, so they're going to be blurry unless you slow down your movement or film them with a high-speed camera. But again, most of Bruce Lee's films did not use high-speed cameras with the exception of Enter the Dragon. So what were we talking about? Oh yes, my fighter nickname, Danger, Ramsey the Danger Dewey. I was making this Kung Fu movie, and I studied all these movements from Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and every other VHS tape of a Kung Fu movie I could find. I would watch and rewind over and over again and watch them in slow motion, trying to figure out how they did these stunts and how to replicate them until I felt like I finally got it. So I assembled a crew of some friends of mine. I got a friend of mine who was a professional clown. He was a juggler who happened to be really good at juggling nunchucks. And he did have some martial arts experience, but he was exceptionally good at twirling nunchucks around and juggling 3 sets of nunchucks. And I was like, I gotta have this guy in the movie. I'm gonna make him my main character. And I decided I'm gonna make this a comedy because there is no way I'm going to make an intentionally serious film with the level of experience I have in fight choreography. It's going to be unintentionally funny, so I might as well just make it funny. So I made this parody of Spider-Man and The Matrix and homages of several other movies and pop culture phenomena that were going around at the time. So it's about this kid who is bitten by a radioactive ninja, and that gives him ninja powers. It gives him the proportionate powers of a ninja master, and then he puts on a ninja outfit and goes out and fights crime with his martial arts skills, especially twirling his nunchucks around, which I think is hilarious because any martial arts nerd understands real ninjas didn't use nunchucks, so I throw that in just to troll the martial arts nerds, and they'll get all mad, like, ninjas didn't use nunchucks, why you put it in your movie? I'm like, ha! Because I love your reaction, that's why. And it's fun. If you miss the fun, you miss everything. Movies are supposed to be fun. Entertainment is supposed to be fun. So we're making this movie, and we get to a certain scene where my friend Josh, he's the juggler playing the main character, Ninja Man, the guy who has the ninja powers, who got bit by the radioactive ninja. And, Josh is a full-time student at the time. He's working full-time as a clown, as a juggler, and so he can't make it to every scene. And then some of the scenes, I wanted to do some fight choreography that he couldn't actually do, some stunts he couldn't actually do. And so I was like, well, nobody else in this crew actually knows martial arts at all except me, so I'll put on the ninja costume, I'll be the stunt double. And so I step in, and I'm doing the stunts in the scenes where Josh can't be there. And my roommate Luke, he's playing one of these characters. During the filming of one of these scenes, I'm doing this ridiculous, stupid stunt. I don't remember if it made it into the movie, but afterwards, he just jokingly says, "It's Ramsey Dewey. Check him out. He does his own stunts." And so the name started sticking, and he's like, Ramsey Dewey. And every time I saw Luke, he just kept repeating this, Ramsey Dewey. And so a number of years later, when I signed up to fight professionally, they asked me on this form that I'm filling out, like, what's your fighter nickname? I'm like, I don't have a fighter nickname. Wait a minute. I do. And the thing about a fighter nickname is you can't give it to yourself. You can't. A nickname is a name somebody else gives to you. It's a name your friends give to you. And so I'm like, well, the only thing like a fighter nickname I have is Danger. And it made me laugh. It made me think of all those hilarious scenes in that movie. So for a while I took it as a joke. Ramsey Danger, haha, that's funny because I'm a nice guy. I'm not really that dangerous, haha, whatever. But when I heard that ring announcer once again say, and in this corner, the Danger, Ramsey Dewey, I was like, dang, I gotta live up to that name. I got something to live up to, man. That sounds so much more badass than what I had in mind. And that's a lesson for all of you. You are not a joke. You are not a joke. You might not take yourself seriously right now because you lack experience or you lack skills, but you are not a joke. Take yourself seriously. Just imagine the most badass ring announcer out there when you walk into a room announcing your presence in the coolest way possible. And introducing you. And live up to that. And I guarantee your life will be so much better than the alternative. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.